Greetings, Culture Warriors. It is I, Jeff Vieira, author of Culture is Everything, and your host for this latest dispatch from the front. I report to you today, I'm proud to say, loud and clear, you are not hearing my voice muffled by a mask. Let's review our story for today. This is from Business Insider. Costco led the way in requiring shoppers to wear masks. Anti-mask customers are still fighting back. It's by Katie Taylor. Anti-mask customers continued to cause problems at Costco. Costco was one of the first retailers to make it mandatory for customers to wear masks, rolling out a new policy in early May. 2 months later, it remains one of the largest companies to introduce its own mask policy instead of simply following local orders on people wearing masks in public. In the most recent viral video of a mask-centric confrontation at Costco, an unmasked man is shown yelling at another customer in Fort Myers, Florida. The customer who was filming the interaction apparently had asked the unmasked man to wear a mask. The unmasked man responds that he is being harassed. "I feel threatened," the unmasked man screams at the customer filming the interaction. "Back the F up. Put your effing phone down," the unmasked man yells, advancing towards the customer filming the interaction. Another video that was posted online last week showed a woman refusing to put her mask on at a Costco warehouse in Oregon. When asked by an employee to put on her mask, which is dangling from her ear, the customer demands to speak with the worker's boss. The employee tells her that her boss will also require she wears a mask, but that he will speak with her outside. The woman sits on the floor in protest and refuses to move. Costco declined to comment on the incidents. In May, a video in which a Costco employee demands a customer put on a mask went viral as people applauded the worker's reaction to the customer's refusal. "I'm not doing it because I woke up in a free country," the customer says. The employee calmly takes away the customer's shopping cart, telling him he needs to leave the warehouse. Costco was prepared for some pushback when it announced shoppers would be required to wear face coverings in stores starting on May 4th. The policy does not apply to children under the age of 2. As we all know, children under the age of 2 cannot possibly get the coronavirus. And people who have medical conditions that do not allow them to wear masks, since we know, of course, those people cannot get or pass on the Wuhan virus. We know some members may find this inconvenient or objectionable, but under the circumstances, we believe the added safety is worth any inconvenience, Costco CEO Craig Jelinek said in a statement. Added safety, okay? "This is not simply a matter of personal choice. A face covering protects not just the wearers, but others too. Unless you're under the age of 2, unless you have a medical condition which won't allow you to wear the mask, then you don't get protection." Costco's policy sparked immediate backlash on social media. However, that backlash was followed by an outpouring of support from people applauding Costco for requiring shoppers to wear masks in stores. According to Pew Research, 65% of U.S. adults who bothered to answer the poll when Pew Research asked it by whatever means they used to access it, said they wore a mask in stores, or all the time when surveyed in early June. Only 7% said they never wore masks in these types of businesses. While most people say they are wearing masks the majority of time, the topic has become politicized in recent weeks. Perhaps the politicization occurs when you start having Pew Research capture the numbers so that you can justify the policy. Some 76% of Democrats and those who lean Democratic said they personally wore a mask all or most of the time in the last month, probably even while they were sleeping, according to the Pew survey, compared to just 53% of Republicans, just a majority. Painting masks as a partisan question runs counter to the growing body of research that indicates face coverings can be crucial in stopping the coronavirus from spreading. Business Insider's Aria Bendix reports that a University of Washington model predicted that if 95% of the U.S. population wore masks in public, it could prevent 33,000 deaths linked to COVID-19. And God, we know at this point that those models are gospel. At Costco, as well as other restaurants and retailers, the burden of enforcing mask policy often falls on employees. A recent viral video showed a shopper ransacking a rack of masks at Target in Arizona until 2 employees intervened. Grocery store workers say they are afraid to ask customers to wear masks out of fear of violent reactions. And a Family Dollar security guard was shot and killed in Michigan after attempting to enforce the state's mask requirement. In late June, a 19-year-old McDonald's worker in California was assaulted by a customer after she asked him to wear a mask. An anti-mask customer shot a Waffle House cook in May. After staff faced harassment, some restaurants have decided to shut dining rooms back down to protect their workers, who will now have no jobs. In 30-plus years of studying retail and crisis situations, we have never seen a situation of customers being so rude to hourly employees, Larry Barton, a professor of crisis management and public safety at the University of Central Florida, told Business Insider's Mary Hanbury in May. Woo! All right, folks, we made it through that one together. So you can tell, even without my histrionic reading, what the bias of Business Insider is on this score. But let's look at it as a piece of persuasive art, if you will. This is another example of what we've seen a lot of lately, which is the 2-minute hate. The 2-minute hate was something invented by George Orwell. I shouldn't say invented by him, described by him is a better phrase, given his novel 1984 simply described a dystopian future wherein the socialists of his day, and he was a socialist, were showing their totalitarian true views as they came to power in various countries. And one of the things that is absolutely required in any socialist regime is you must have an enemy. You must have someone to focus the people's hate and frustration with socialism upon. And it can't be socialists, right? You've got to steer them toward more useful targets. And so in 1984, the party, Ingsoc, would steer the hatred and frustration of the people, the anger, righteous anger, at the oppression that they were experiencing, that would be steered toward a target that they would pick from time to time. They would literally name a person or group of people, and then everybody at the same time for 2 minutes, 2 full minutes a day would express their anger and frustration at those people and what they wanted to do to them if they ever saw them. And that catharsis, like lancing a boil, would provide relief to society. Because you see, their bottled up anger had been given a vent. And harmlessly filtered away into the atmosphere. So we're seeing a lot of this. This week's 2-minute hate target in the media, apparently, is people who refuse to wear masks. Now, mind you, not children under 2 and not people with medical conditions, because those people, they can't expect them to wear a mask. Now, children under 2 even wear their Halloween masks, but that's another story. But what you don't see here, despite the wave at research, what you don't see here is any proof that the mask actually works to prevent the transmission of this virus. And let me be very clear. When we say prevent the transmission of the virus, what I mean, and what I think most people mean, is if I have the virus and you do not, will the mask keep me from giving the virus to you? And the answer to that in the research is nope. You can check this for yourself. Get a box of those masks and read on the box what it says about the coronavirus. It will tell you this will not filter coronavirus, not these cloth masks. Certainly not wrapping your boxers around your head. There's no filtration on them. You see talk about healthcare workers and the N95 mask. The 95 in N95 refers to the percentage of particles that the mask interrupts. It's a one-way mask. So the purpose of the N95 is to keep healthcare workers from contracting the virus. It does this by filtering out 95% of the particles they inhale. If the healthcare worker has the virus. And remember, from what we know, you don't have to run a fever or show symptoms in order to actually have the virus. That's the best we know at the moment. The latest guidance is that you do have to be symptomatic somehow to demonstrate, to be able to pass it on. But the only thing they're doing to screen really for the virus is temperature checks, and you don't necessarily have to run a fever. Two of the symptoms of the virus are lost taste and smell. Conceivably, you could experience that symptom before you experience a fever, and you could be capable of passing on the virus at that point while passing your temperature check, right? The other thing is those temperature checks are not perfect, particularly in the hands of just anybody, zapping at your forehead for a variety of reasons. You can get false positives and false negatives. That equipment isn't really calibrated, is it? So you could certainly run into a situation where someone has the virus and is wearing an N95 mask and is passing that virus on to others because it does not filter your exhaled breath. Right? So even the N95s are not perfect protection by any means. In the U.S. military, when they want to avoid biological agents, along with chemical agents, etc., they have a special suit that everyone wears. It covers you from head to toe. It's basically rubber. They have gas masks, which have filters in them, which filter both the exhale and the inhale. But the chief purpose is to filter what you're bringing in, right? To protect you from the environment outside. That suit is very uncomfortable. It's expensive. You've seen our troops wear them because if you followed any of the footage of the initial invasion of Iraq, you saw it a lot during Desert Storm in 1991 because there was a legitimate fear of chemical and biological agents being used against our troops. So they had to, in the desert heat, pile into those suits. Now, in addition to those suits, that's just one layer of protection. When you go into and out of contaminated zones, you follow a decontamination procedure. Because what good is it if you've got the biological contaminant on the outside of your suit, and then you bring it into an area which is supposed to be decontaminated? You just contaminated the area, right? So they have an extensive process. You'll see them go through it. Nowadays, it's mainly a decontamination tents. where they process this as you take the suit off and they clean it down and et cetera, et cetera. That is not what's being done here. What is being done here is people are taking their damn boxers off and wrapping around their face to go in Costco. It doesn't protect anybody. When you actually do the math on this, they estimate that it takes just 1,000 particles of the virus to be transmitted from one person to another. 1,000 particles. Any cough or sneeze is estimated to emit 2 million of these particles. So if you have calculators at home, you do the math. Even at the 95% protection on the inbound to the healthcare worker, somebody sneezes in their presence. There are now 2 million virus particles airborne. The mask is 95% effective. How many particles are they at risk of inhaling? It's 5% of 2 million. Is that greater or less than 1,000? It's greater than 1,000. It's a lot greater than 1,000. So if someone coughs and you breathe that air wearing an N95 mask, will you get infected? Well, chances are you will. Wouldn't it be better then if that person were to block that sneeze or cough with, say, the crook of their elbow? Why, yes, it would be a lot better because it would keep that virus from getting aerosolized, sprayed out into the air where someone else could inhale it. It limits the contamination to the crook of your elbow. But you know what people aren't doing when they're wearing those masks? They're not covering their face when they cough or sneeze with their arms because they're assuming the mask will do it. So again, the masks don't work. And in fact, the reason you know that the masks do not work is that there is no study that they're pointing to and running down the aisles with saying, see, the masks work. The reason you know the masks don't work is because they're not pointing to real metrics associated with the increased use of the mask. Instead, they're pointing to models. Models got us into this mess. The models were laughably wrong on this virus. So given that the data is so poor, why are we continuing to endure economic hardship in light of that? It's because it suits certain people, politicians, Democrats, to keep us locked down. It is a tool of oppression. It is a way to satisfy their psychological need for control and power. It is a way for them to steer events such that their handle on power will not be challenged this coming election. That is why they are doing this. There is a boot on our neck, and it doesn't belong to a Minneapolis police officer. Costco foolishly jumped on this bandwagon. Costco is pretending that the masks offer absolute protection for the people wearing them and for the people in the environment, while absolving other people from wearing them at all. It makes no logical or scientific sense. If you're using a barrier to prevent transmission of something, then obviously not wearing the barrier will not prevent the transmission of it. If they were to demand that everyone wear condoms to prevent pregnancy, and then they said, well, you don't have to wear a condom if you have a medical condition that won't allow you to wear condoms, you've done nothing to protect that person from getting somebody pregnant, right? Doesn't that make sense? So when you see these diktats from our, quote, experts, I put the experts in quotes because the only true measure of expertise is that the predictions you make come true. And these people can't make a prediction that comes true to save their life. When your experts say, well, these masks work. Let me tell you something. When they talk about them working, they are not using the same definition you or I would use in terms of working, which is to prevent the transmission of this virus. That's not what they're talking about at all. They're talking about working in the sense of increasing the potential for a Democrat presidential candidate to win in this November election. That is what they are talking about. That is what they mean. Costco, foolishly, has declared war on its own customers by embracing this policy. If you've ever been in a Costco, you know that they are the biggest warehouses you could be in. Everything is far apart. Social distancing, which again, logically, can help reduce the incidence rate of a disease, because if you're far enough apart, then even if you cough or sneeze, by the time you get to that air pocket with all the virus particles in, it's probably, most of it, filtered to the ground. Now, is it enough to keep absolute transmission from the disease from happening? No. The 6 feet is an absolutely arbitrary number. There was no study, there was no thing. And all you have to know about the 6 feet is that in Europe, it is 2 meters. And 2 meters is not the same thing as 6 feet, right? But in concept, keeping further apart limits the probability of exposure to an airborne virus. And so should reduce some number of those cases. Now, it doesn't really matter, because when you're talking about an entire population, we're not just talking about any moment in time who has the virus. We're talking about the need to go more than 14 days between exposures, between the virus being able to transmit, so that the virus will die out. And that's a lot harder to do. It's one thing to maintain your social distance of 6 feet or whatever for a short period of time in a Costco warehouse. It is another thing to maintain your social distance constantly, long enough for everyone, so that you can burn out this virus. It's not really entirely possible, but because people get this virus and they develop antibodies to it, over time you get that real benefit because of something called herd immunity. Enough of us have antibodies to it that the virus cannot find a purchase in the population anymore. So the number of new symptomatic cases drops. And eventually it drops to a point where the virus dies out. With coviruses, this is generally known as summer, because as people get outside, they spread out. You'll note that one of the things the experts advised us on early in this lockdown was for us all to be cooped up in our homes. Being cooped up in your home is a great way to transmit a virus. There's nowhere to go. And by shutting down everywhere there was to go, and by doing stupid things like arresting people on beaches, big wide open spaces with wind blowing through them, and parks, big wide open spaces, usually with wind blowing through them, with sunlight, which kills the virus, by encouraging us to stay away from those situations, well, all they did was ensure more virus cases. Costco is clearly on the side of these lunatics. I have a fairly large family. We shopped at Costco quite often in an effort to save money, and we were willing to pay that membership fee every year, and we were willing to travel quite a distance to our nearest Costco warehouse for that savings. Guess what? We no longer shop at Costco. Why? Because we are not going to go in and be treated like criminals for having some damned common sense. So Costco is not enjoying the boom in grocery shopping and essential shopping that other stores are. And the reason for that is because Costco has decided that customers who have an ability to think logically, rationally, who pay attention to things, these people they don't want. People who value their own freedom, who, as adults, decide, you know what, I would rather have the virus than have these petty tin pot tyrants thinking they can tell us what to do without regard to the Constitution, without regard to our state laws, arbitrarily. And so, you know what? I'm going to not wear my mask so I can signal to them that not everybody is going to obey this. And in fact, when I'm approached by someone at Costco and told that I have to wear a garment in their store, whether that garment be a mask or whether that garment be a burqa, I'm not going to wear it. Whether that garment be a yellow Star of David, I'm not going to wear it. Whether that garment be an armband, I am not going to wear it because, by God, I live in a free country. Costco has forgotten this. And because Costco has forgotten this, they no longer share the values of many of their customers. And because they no longer share the values of many of their customers, they're losing those customers. And I'll tell you, once you show your true colors like this, you will never get those customers back, no matter what your prices look like. Because at the end of the day, currying political favor with those who would be your masters is one thing. But culture is everything. Thank you and have a great day.